So as we've already been kind of focusing on and hearing about, this is our first Sunday where we do something slightly different. This kind of academic year, we've been thinking about or God as Father, Son, Spirit, and healer, and he's compassionate as well. So we've looked at lots of different attributes of God, who he is, and the next one is that God is just. Not just something else, he is just. So that's the whole theme of justice, and we're going to be looking at that today. And we're going to have a couple of little videos in here. We're going to have a little bit of an opportunity to chat, but also some time for reflection, which is what the post-it notes on your tables are for a little bit later as well. So I just thought it would be quite useful to unpack that word just and justice. And it's got loads and loads of meanings, and sometimes it's just really helpful to know, for those kind of literary geeks amongst you, those synonyms, the words that mean something similar. So we've got it's fair, just, impartial, fair-minded, even-handed, equitable, unbiased, objective. So all of those kind of aspects come into just and justice. Sometimes it's also helpful to think about what justice is not. I know that sounds a bit weird, but kind of thinking about the opposites as well. And so we're thinking about, obviously, unjust, prejudiced, biased, unfair, discriminatory, preferential, weighted, influenced, one-sided, or wrongful. So hopefully that kind of has brought you a little bit into a sense of God being just, but also what God is not as well, because that's really important to take on board. I was trying to look up, because I live in a world, obviously you know that I work in a school, lots of you, so I'm in the world of education, and sometimes it's helpful to take things on board by hearing things, seeing things, and doing things. And I was looking up that whether there was a Micah sign or a BSL, British Sign Language sign for just, and the best I could find was fair, and there were a few signs for fair. One was kind of fair. Does anyone want to try that? Fair. One was fair, which I quite liked, fair. The other one was fair, which is kind of just doing it like that. I was a little bit worried, though, that some of the younger people in the room might think it was a bit 6-7, but we won't go there, I guess. But that sense of fair is you know, it's just really helpful to kind of have that understanding, isn't it? So, just to get you guys thinking a little bit more, Josh has done a brilliant job already about us thinking about particular scenarios, about whether they are just or unjust, or whether you agree with them, whether you disagree with them, which scenario you think is the right scenario. Lots of scenarios C, I noticed, which, you know, we like to do that as human beings. It's not black and white, is it? So I want you to have a little think now, and maybe have a chat on your tables just for a couple of minutes about a situation where you have said it's not fair, or you've thought it's not fair. Now that might be from the very minor, it's not fair that, you know, my big brother's gone to bed later, he can stay up later than me, or it might be something much deeper as well, and in which case, obviously, you know, share at whatever level you feel safe and comfortable to do so. But just for a couple of minutes, just think about those situations. It might be bigger in our world, about things that you're aware of that are not fair. It might be from the very to some other people might think it's trivial, but obviously to you it won't be. So, you know, receive that question in whichever way you want to take it, but tell me, or tell each other, we're not going to be roving Mike with this one, so you're safe, don't worry. It's not fair, so off you go for a couple of minutes. Right, so can I draw us back together? I'm sure you've probably only just started and scratched the surface, but it'll be good to move on just with some of those things in our minds. You know, really interesting just to be able to earwig a little bit from the kind of, senses of the bigger world politics, particularly the situations that are going on this weekend in the world, but also things that are much more personal, and, also within situations in our day-to-day life, out at work and school and things like that. Just to say there that if anything did emerge for you that just feels really painful or raw or just quite upsetting, please do share that with a trusted friend at some point, and just unpick that a little bit, because I think sometimes those questions go deeper. So, today we're going to look at two aspects. We're going to look at God being just, but we're also going to look at what he's calling us to do. And you might also have a sneak preview of that in terms of the colouring pages that you've got on your tables today, because that's a key verse for us. One of those things may speak to you more than the other. God is just might kind of resonate a bit more with you than what you are feeling able to do today. That's okay, don't worry. Just feel, connect with it on whatever level you feel is appropriate today. But the key thing is that God is just. There's a verse it's mentioned throughout the Bible, God being just. But there's a verse which says, he is the rock. It's in Deuteronomy. His works are perfect and all his ways are just. A faithful God who does no wrong, upright and just is he. So there's that image of God being our rock. He never changes. He is completely faithful. He's created our world. He knows it inside out. And he doesn't get it wrong. He's just. That's a really important verse to really hold on to. I'm going to suggest we read it together, because that'll hopefully just make it go in a little bit more. So can you humour me on this one? So we're going to read it together. So we'll go from he is the rock, all right? He is the rock. His works are perfect and all his ways are just. A faithful God who does no wrong, upright and just is he. So whatever we are facing, we can come back to God being our rock and know that we can trust him. He has got that bigger picture. We live in a fallen world. We know that. Rubbish stuff happens, injustice happens, but we can always go back to God being our rock. So justice is mentioned throughout the Bible more than some other things that you might kind of be aware of. And there's a key word, the Hebrew word is mishpat, and it actually kind of means restorative justice. There's different types of justice, and we'll kind of hear a little bit more about them in one of the videos. But restorative justice is about seeking out those vulnerable people and helping them to advocate for them and change social structures. So God is calling, or God is a God of that restorative justice, but he's also calling us to it. Mishpat is mentioned over 200 times in the Old Testament or Hebrew Bible, whatever you want to say, with related terms for justice, judgment, being just, and then of course it's in the New Testament as well. So in total, justice is mentioned about 1,000 times. Some estimates are even more than that in the Bible. So that just shows how core it is and why it's really important that we're reflecting on it. It's quite a deep concept, but actually really, really valuable and really important. So we're going to watch a little video now, just the first half of the video. It's from the Bible Project, who you may not have heard of. It's quite a lot to take on board, but it's really helpful because it's got lots of images to grab hold of as well. I'd really encourage you to see the whole video at some point. We're only going to watch the first little chunk, but hopefully that'll give you a bit more insight into this mishpat sense of justice, and also kind of righteousness which goes alongside it. we'll send out the link. So justice, that's really kind of hopefully captured that sense of God created us as human beings to be all equal. But in our fallen world, we know that it has become really unequal. And so God is calling us to act justly. And so Micah, there's a really famous verse, you've got it on your tables, there's a really famous verse from Micah. What does the Lord require of you? To act justly, love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Now, the context of Micah was that he was a prophet who was speaking to Israel at the time, saying that they've rebelled. He was bringing warnings, but also bringing hope. The leaders in that time had become wealthy through theft and greed, and the prophets, so other kind of significant leaders, were promising God's protection to anyone who could afford to pay them. So it was that kind of corrupt system. And I'm sure that we can think of situations where leaders and people of significance in our nation, in our world today, are not honouring God in the way that they are choosing to behave. But he was actually warning that disaster would come, but he was offering hope that if people turned to God, that there would be a shepherd who would come, God would restore Jerusalem and bring peace to the earth. And one of the things he was saying, what does the Lord require of you, is acting justly, loving mercy, so kindness is another good word for mercy, and walking humbly with your God. So not thinking of ourselves more highly than we should, recognizing we are children of God. You never put yourself down, but actually, because of who we are in God, we are able to bring those others up who others have maybe pushed down. So we really need to think about that aspect of acting justly. So we've talked about God being just, so therefore he's calling us to act justly. And James mentioned last week, it was brilliant really to reflect on the how prayer and fasting can sometimes unlock something at a deeper spiritual level that is going to change our situations or our world. We looked at those challenging statistics about how food banks and food insecurity is a real daily challenge for people, and then the bizarreness of food waste and how much food was being wasted. So another thing that we're going to reflect on as part of this, and then we're kind of moving on into a time of what can we do? How can we call on God to change things? We're going to imagine, and this is a bit of a strange one, that our whole world is actually down to 100 people. So, and then kind of look at some statistics around that. And I want you, as you watch this next video, to just reflect on what resonates with you, as maybe it's something that's unexpected, maybe it's a shocking statistic, maybe it's something that's on your heart that you would love God to be changing. There might be none of these things. It might be something else that's on your heart that's not fair in your experience in your life today, or something that's on your heart about the world today. And so we're going to watch this little bit video. So it's basically it starts off by talking about the 7.6 billion people that there are in the world. Well, actually now, that was from 2018, now there's 8.2 or 8.3 billion people in the world. So that's kind of quite a lot for my small brain to get my head round this morning. So we're imagining we're putting it down to 100 people and then looking at what's the reality, and I'd just like you to reflect. Now, this is where we have got the post-it notes, so you might just kind of jot down something that sticks with you just so you don't forget it, because maybe it's just me, but by the time I've finished watching something, I've forgotten what I was going to write down. But Then, a little bit later, we're going to turn that into a prayer and have a time of reflection and be able to pray for some of these areas as well. So if it's okay, we can have the next video, please. So I wonder what maybe resonated for you. There's another fact about money, bit of a contentious issue, but 10 of those 100 people have 82% of all the wealth in the world. 55 people live on £5.50 or more each day. So, of course, that means that 45 people have less than £5.50 to live on per day. And of those, 8 people have less than £1.70 per day. So that means that they are likely to often miss out on meals or have a daily struggle to have food to keep themselves well. And sometimes when we're talking about things that aren't fair, or we're reflecting on those things, it can feel overwhelming. But of course, we're called to worship a God who is just. We don't need to carry that burden ourselves. If we're really taking time to think about it, we can actually bring those requests to God, and we can ask God to carry those burdens, because he can change things. We know that he sees those injustices. And if I had time, which I don't, I'm sure there would be we would be able to reflect on lots of really encouraging situations and stories across the world. And I'm sure we could share some here where we have seen people who are able to address those injustices. God calls us, as we know, to address them. It might just be as simple as standing up for a friend when somebody else is saying something or doing something that is unjust or unfair. It might be stepping in when we can see somebody else is being treated unfairly. But it might be bigger. It might be writing a letter to an MP or joining a charity and being able to advocate for others. It might be that in your workplace, that you are already advocating for others by the very nature of making sure that people are not missing out, that you are looking to support all and encourage all to have fair access to what they're entitled to. In Matthew 25, Jesus tells a story, and I'm sure you'll be familiar with it. It's talking about being hungry. So Jesus says to in the story, he says, "When I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." And the king will reply, "I tell you the truth, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers of mine, you did for me." And of course, that's true of Jesus. Whatever we did for the least of one of these, we do for Jesus. We bring Jesus' love, compassion, care. We know that God is the healer. That can change people's lives just by bringing that and doing as he did. We talk a lot about, in Practicing the Way, about becoming like Jesus and doing as he did. So this kind of links back, and we've already said it, that God is compassionate, God is a healer, God is just. This story from Jesus just makes it really, really simple. It's really practical, isn't it? Over this next week, I'm sure that there will be situations where you are able to just lift somebody's day and bring some kind of support in whatever way that is relevant for you. So we're going to move into our final worship time in a few minutes. And during that time, what I'd really encourage you to do is thinking about something that has stuck with you this morning, whether it's to do with even as far back as some of those scenarios that we were talking about, which might have just triggered something in your brain about an unfair situation that you've dealt with, or it might be something out of the conversation that we had about it's not fair, or it might be something that has come up here, or something you watched on the news this morning. Certainly over this weekend, there's some really challenging situations in our world. I'd encourage you, on one of the post-it notes, write a prayer for justice. Write something that you want to lift before God today, and us as a community, we can pray for those things, for God to be at work in our world. We need God to change things in our world today. And when you're ready during this worship time, please come and bring it to the foot of the cross, or stick it on the cross. I don't mind, wherever you feel comfortable. And just hand that. It's kind of a physical act of handing that situation over to God. If during this morning there is something that's resonated and you feel you would like somebody to pray with you, then please do ask a friend, ask one of the leaders to pray with you as well this morning, just so that you're not carrying that out into this week. But I'd really encourage you to think this week, what can you do? Look for God to give you opportunities over this week to act justly, love mercifully, and walk humbly with your God.